The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all age. I feel like I'm talking about the wrong promotion already, and we're just getting underway. Hi, everybody. No, I'm not Patrick Tetza. I'm Harry Broadhurst. I'm that other goofball that helps you bring you Wrestling Unwrapped here on the W2M Network. And this is Wrestling Unwrapped as we present WCW Uncensored 1998. To give you a bit of a background on this, Patrick and I discussed this a while back about the concept of bringing you the three major shows from the three major companies. We would have done 1997, but, well, ECW pay-per-view wasn't a thing until April in 97, so that was out. So on this, the 19th anniversary instead of the 20th, I feel like we may have been better off saving this for next year. This is WCW Uncensored. Patrick, good evening, sir.
Guten Nacht. How are you?
Well, considering the week I had, not too bad, actually. I don't know if you can tell, I got a little bit of a frog in my throat. I'm battling bronchitis as I do this show, but we've already missed one in the last month, and I wasn't going to have us miss a second on my account.
But mind you, I said if you were still sick, we weren't doing the show. I had no issues doing that. That's on you, buddy.
Well, I am still sick, but we're still doing the show. Anywho,
lovely.
So to the reason that we're here tonight, so Jenna Jameson last week, Uncensored tonight, you know what, not even going to waste my time. It's not worth it. All the jokes that can be made have been made. I just wish everybody the best as they move on.
Well, okay, there's one minor joke you can still make. Hell, I'll make it.
Are they not happening?
No. It has nothing to do with the actual situation. It has to go with the pay-per-views. We had Jenna Jameson last week. WCW goes uncensored this week. And next week is DX-rated.
So what you're saying is we're not out of the woods yet.
Oh, God, not even close.
That works on two levels.
I know.
And that is the first and the last comment that we're going to make about said situation tonight. All right.
Yes,
do you have the results ready for us, sir?
Don't I always?
No. Usually it's my job. That's why I'm doing the introductions, because you're handling the results.
Yeah, but when I actually do it, I'm ready.
Yeah, well, some of us take a little bit more diligence in that and don't go to Wikipedia. Some of us use our own personal archives.
You insisted I go to Wikipedia.
Well, you don't have your own personal archives. All right.
Exactly. So anyway.
Before we get to the results, though, this is a presentation of the W2M Network. You can find us online, www.w2mnet.com, where you can find articles by myself and Patrick as we took Wrestling Unwrapped into a written format. The most recent one is Shine Volume 1. It is the fourth written article that we've done. All of the archives can be found on the W2Mnet website. And in addition, we'll be eventually hyperlinked over to the Facebook page as well. Patrick, where can they find us on Facebook?
You can find us on Facebook by going on Facebook. Okay, more specifically, Facebook.com/Wrestling Unwrapped. You can also find us on Twitter at WUOffTheShelf.
And tonight's episode of Wrestling Unwrapped is being brought to you by the Madhouse Toy Chest. Stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest. If you're a fan of anything wrestling, DVDs, action figures, VHS tapes, magazines, posters, you name it, he just actually added a couple of the WCW Hot Wheels onto the eBay store recently, too. So if you're a WCW fan, since we're covering a WCW show, maybe you have an interest in picking up some nostalgia, by all means, visit a friend over at the Madhouse Toy Chest. Mention that you heard this advertisement here on Wrestling Unwrapped, and Jason will include a free gift with your purchase. All right, Patrick, let's go to Mobile, Alabama for WCW's Uncensored 1998. These are your results.
Wow, you took a left turn on that very quickly. Anyway, The results for WCW Uncensored 1998, March the 15th, my mother's birthday, actually, 1998. Kicking things off, Booker T defeats Eddie Guerrero, with Chavo Guerrero in his corner, at 11 minutes and 8 seconds to retain the WCW World Television Championship. Juventud Guerrera defeats Conan at 10 minutes and 21 seconds. Chris Jericho defeats Dino Machino, a.k.a. Dean Malenko, to retain the World Cruiserweight Championship at 14:42. Lex Luger defeats Scott Steiner at 3 minutes and 53 seconds. DDP, Diamond Dallas Page, retains the United States Championship in 15:53, defeating Raven and Chris Benoit in a Triple Jeopardy match, not a triple threat. The Giant beats Kevin Nash by disqualification at 6:36 in a match where the jackknife powerbomb was legal.
Just real quick, that Triple Jeopardy. Hey, hold on a second. Just real quick for those of you unaware, the Triple Jeopardy is basically the WCW version of the Triple Threat. It was not a three-way dance. It was one fall to a finish.
I said triple threat.
I was going to say three-way dance, and then I realized ECW three-way dances were elimination, so that wasn't accurate. All right, carry on.
Where were we?
Giant.
Bret the Hitman Hart defeats Kurt Hennig with Rick Rude in his corner at 13 minutes and 51 seconds.
Wait. Stop. Hitman, really? Welcome to Alabama.
I also said Kurt Hennig.
That was not perfect.
Neither was their spelling. Anyway.
Again, Alabama school system, so what do you want? All right, carry on.
Sting defeats Scott Hall to retain the World Heavyweight Championship at 8 minutes and 28 seconds. And in the main event, Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage go to a no contest in a steel cage match at 15 minutes and 20 seconds when the Disciple interferes and referees get bum rushed and Sting comes out and the whole thing's a ploy and the damn thing could have been on Nitro, and we'll get to it when we get to it.
Can I point out the sad fact that Charles Robinson took the biggest bump in that match?
Are you really surprised?
I mean, no, but still. All right, we'll talk more about that later. Thank you, Patrick. I do believe you had an official introduction that you typed out for us here, so I don't want to go and get into that, and we'll go right into the show.
Do you really want me to repeat that? All righty. So Sting defends the title against the NWO. The NWO faces the NWO, and the NWO essentially takes over this show. While last week they may have had Jenna Jameson, tonight WCW is the one that's uncensored. I hate myself.
I'm just going to suggest we turn the page and get into the show.
Our opening contest.
Complete no-sell. Love it. All right.
For the World Television Championship. The World Television Championship. Booker T defending against Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero with Chavo Guerrero in his corner, kind of.
The very next night, Chavo Guerrero would debut the greatest shirt that Chavo Guerrero has ever worn. I was watching the next Nitro on the network, and it's the Spring Breakout edition of the Nitro 1998. And it's the debut of the Eddie Guerrero is my favorite wrestler t-shirt.
I forgot about that.
It's the best shirt Chavo ever had.
It's not the best. It would not. Here's the thing. It would not have been the best shirt on this show, though.
Interesting fact, Booker T was not supposed to be the television champion at this point. And I think I talked to you about this via text while we were while I was watching the show originally, because I watched it before you did. And I told you the story there, and I'll relate it to you guys, you listeners at home here real quick. The actual Plant Television champion coming out of the previous month's pay-per-view, which would have been Super Bowl for those of you who don't know your WCW timeline, was supposed to be Rick Martel. Yes, that Rick Martel. Martel was facing Booker T, and the winner was supposed to face Perry Saturn immediately afterwards. Martel was supposed to win both matches and leave Super Bowl as the champion. However, in the first match that he wrestled against Booker T, he tore his calf muscle and never wrestled again.
Eek.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, go ahead. Carry on.
So, I mean, I think it's fair to say that when it comes to this match, it's not about the title. It was never about the title. The entire point of this match is the whole thing with Chavo and Eddie. So it's actually a very, very good opener. And, you know, Booker T ends up, like we said, winning and retaining. Eddie Guerrero is probably one of the most hated guys on the roster at this point. One of. Even over how much or how little the NWO actually gives them. That notwithstanding. But, wow, Eddie Guerrero is like a great douche. He's an ass.
Yeah, there are very few people capable of playing that outright dick heel quite like Eddie Guerrero. And we would see kind of shades of it again in their teaming as Los Guerreros in the WWE, where Eddie would take advantage of the situation even when it came to his nephew Chavo. But it all originated back here.
Indeed, and like I said, the point of it more was about Chavo and Eddie, even leading to the point, you know, afterwards when Chavo, or rather Eddie beats the hell out of Chavo after Eddie loses. You know, Booker T doesn't even really get a chance to celebrate the victory, which kind of sucks. I hate when things like that happen, but in order to kind of advance a storyline and things like that, you know, sometimes that has to be done. And like we said, it leads to the greatest shirt of all time, or at least one of the greatest shirts of all time, debuting the very next night.
Yeah, actually, the match itself is actually really entertaining. Then again, to be fair, it's Booker T and Eddie Guerrero. Booker T would not be quite the worker that he was in WCW when he came to the WWE, but at this point right here, I would argue that Booker T is probably at his peak as a worker. And frankly, any Eddie Guerrero is pretty much good Eddie Guerrero as long as he's clean. And at this point, he hasn't yet had the car crashes, so he's completely clean still at this point.
Yeah. So.
As you mentioned, the real point coming out of this match is the post-match beatdown that Eddie lays on Chavo as he whips him into a couple of guardrails and proceeds to beat him generally all around ringside before just nonchalantly walking backstage without him. The storyline would eventually lead to Chavo getting a pay-per-view match against his uncle and Eddie winning that too. So, you know, sorry, Chavo. No bueno for you.
But Chavo never really got a chance anywhere. First, it was getting the hell beaten out of him by his uncle. Then he would later on get beaten 13 seconds by Kane. And then he'd constantly be beat by a midget. Never really got a fair due. And then also Hornswoggle would beat him.
As
long as you know what I'm talking about.
The problem with Chavo isn't necessarily that he was a bad worker. I think he was overly pushed in certain companies. And I don't know how much Netflix you do and don't watch, but Lucha Underground just made its way to Netflix here, and it is horrendously obvious how overpushed he is at the start of Lucha Underground as well.
Well, kind of obvious.
All right, match number 2.
Moving on, our next contest, a maskless Juventud Guerrera taking on Conan.
Juventud would be at the previous month at Super Bowl, tapping out to the Lion Tamer of Chris Jericho at just a shade over 13 minutes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is post-mask, pre-juice.
Yes. And
Yeah,
this match.
What about it?
And this match is le garbage.
This was all Conan, and it wasn't good. It just...
There are very few actual wrestlers who I dislike more than Conan. And I mean that in terms of in the ring, not necessarily as people, because I don't know how Conan is as a person. I've never met the guy. But when it comes to going back and reviewing these older shows, and we've gone into WCW several times now, most recently Halloween Havoc 1998, but one of the things that always stands out to me is the fact that the Conan matches just almost never measure up.
Yeah, and it probably doesn't help that you look at the two matches that this is sandwiched between, and you're supposed to be, like, attempting... The whole thing going into this match was still, obviously, Hoovy having lost his mask the month before, and, you know, this wasn't the end. This was a new beginning of Juventud Guerrera, and if you're going to try and go with something like that, you got to give him a little bit more offense than he got in this match. I get that NWO, you know, is obviously the dominating force, especially when you look at this damn card. But I don't think Conan had the kind of creative control that Hulk Hogan had. I would like to think that Hoovy could have gotten at least a little more offense in, and even he didn't even hit a finisher. He won because he reversed a very lackadaisical pin by Conan and kept Conan down for the 3. That was it.
And then Conan beat his ass after the bell.
Exactly. So there's no good to be had here. I say we skip this and just go right to the next match.
No, because I feel the need to explain the storyline here. The storyline here is that Conan feels that Juventud disrespected his Mexican tradition by putting his mask up in the match against Jericho and losing the mask. And that this wasn't about NWO versus WCW. This was more about the Mexican traditions involved in the background story there. But if you're going to do something like that, and if, as you mentioned, you're going to give Juventud that kind of a push there with the whole never surrender and the whole this is a new beginning for Juventud without the mask, then yeah, having a fluke pinfall victory off of a mat-based crucifix counter is not the way to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just the whole, there was very little good that came out of this to me. Actually, I don't think there was any good that really came out of this. Because Hoovy looks like a fluke winner. Conan looks like an idiot. Just spot.
Yeah, Conan looked like he took Juventud for granted. It cost him and bit him in the ass.
So, I'm done.
All right, now we can move on to the next contest, which under normal circumstances would be easily the best match on any show that it was on. It had some serious competition tonight.
I can think of 2 matches. Damn sure wasn't the main event. Anywho, our next contest for the... Huh?
To be fair, Scott Hall does bust his ass in the title match, but we'll get to that match a little bit later. Let's go ahead and get into the Cruiserweight title.
That wasn't the main event anyway.
Listen, that's my main event.
True. As we were, the following contest is for the Cruiserweight Championship. It is Dean Malenko, going up against the champion, Chris Jericho.
I prefer Mr. Record.
You prefer Mr. Roboto?
Yes.
Fair enough. I still prefer Dino Machino. But anyway.
Either one of them is good. Ask Vivian Garcia. She'll tell you.
Anyway. I say nay on that joke.
Oh, boo. All right. Back to the title match.
Back to this match. This was by no means a bad match, but it felt kind of weird. Okay. the match itself didn't feel weird then. After match stuff made it feel kind of weird because they obviously, bust their ass and have one hell of a match. Dean looking several times like he was going to win, and Jericho was just able to kind of overcome everything.
I may be about to step on your toes here. You know who comes out of this match looking like the biggest heel?
Mean Gene Okerlund?
Mean Gene Okerlund, absolutely.
That's why I was going to talk about that. Jericho actually real quick, Jericho picks up a clean as a whistle win.
Well, let me give you the reason for this here as far as why Malenko's taking time off. Because, as you know, I happen to have a favorite wrestler. I mean, longtime listeners of the show know that it's no secret. It's one of the men involved in this match, by which I mean Dean Jericho. By which I mean Chris Jericho. I just recently finished his second DVD set that the WWE released called The Road is Jericho. And in the process of The Road is Jericho, this match actually appears on that DVD set. And he talks about the way that they wrote Malenko off with him showing emotion. And the interesting fact is that the reason they wrote Malenko off of television is because he was about to become a father for the first time.
Oh.
So they needed something to get Malenko off of TV for a while so he could go home and be with his pregnant wife.
Wow, wait a minute. So WCW didn't hold it against him that he wanted to go home and be with his wife who was about to give birth.
Well, in fairness, he wasn't the champion at this point either, Ricky.
I was wondering if you were going to catch that. Anyway.
All right, back to the match itself. The match itself is really good, and in my opinion, Malenko has one of the stupidest moves ever done in professional wrestling.
I know you're not talking about the Gutbuster.
I am 100% talking about that Gutbuster. That is the pinnacle of stupidity. There is no way to protect that. That move has to suck.
Look, he's the man of 1,004 moves. Occasionally 1,001. He's the man of 1,001 holds. Occasionally he's going to have one or two that are going to suck to take.
I'm just saying.
Also, real quick, Chris Jericho is not the man of 1,004. He's the man of 1,006. He fell asleep at some point and probably missed a couple of holds.
It was Bobby Heenan that fell asleep because Jericho was running down the list to Heenan, and Heenan fell asleep.
No, he said that Jericho told him that he may have dozed off a couple of times and may have missed a few, so he was probably 1,006.
All the same. Yeah, two of the better technical wrestlers in WCW, and I would make the argument at this point that Jericho may have been the most over heel act in the company.
In terms of actually being a heel. Because you could still argue Hulk Hogan being the most over, but he was kind of getting cheered. Plus, the whole NWO thing. So, but it is definitely, and okay, we should mention it, is that you talked about them having Dean show emotion for the first time and using it as a way to write him off for a little bit. But we mentioned, Mean Gene Okerlund being the number one heel coming out of this match. Why? Because Mean Gene's a dick. He's a jerk to Dean.
There are those that would argue that that's just Mean Gene's real-life personality come to screen for once.
I always thought Mean Gene seemed like a nice guy. Perverted, but a nice guy.
Anyone who's constantly trying to shill to get me to call a 900 number is not a nice guy.
Hey, he made money on that.
You know who else had
his livelihood?
You know who else had a 900 number? Jenna Jameson. Moving on.
Next week's gonna be even worse. Yeah, Mean Gene is just a jerk, like telling Dean Malenko straight to his face, "You're the favorite. You were supposed to win, and you lost." It's like, you're being a jerk.
Here's my question. Did Mean Gene have money riding on this? Were the London sports books taking bets on wrestling pay-per-views back in the late 90s?
You said Vegas had him as the odds-on favorite, so who knows?
Apparently nobody ever keyed those casinos into the fact that it's a lark. All right, moving on.
Yeah, but the fans still don't know who's going to win. Why can't they make money on it? Anyway, our next contest, the shortest match on the show, Lex Luger and Scott Steiner.
There are those that would argue, thankfully, the shortest match on the show.
By a fair margin as well. How many roids do you think were in this ring?
More than Dr. Zaharian gave out in the early 90s. How's that for an answer?
Alrighty. Because I'm trying to think of how many also interfere in this, because this is once again WCW versus NWO, because the Wolfpack did not exist yet. So Luger was not in the NWO right now.
Yes,
but
give him
I'm trying to think who else. I'm trying to think of who else interferes in this. Scott Norton?
Scott Norton. Scott Norton, Rick Steiner. I want to say Brian Adams. Actually, Brian Adams.
No, Brian Adams was Giant and Nash.
Yeah, I was just about to say Vincent, maybe.
No, I think it was Giant and Nash too. So I think in this case it was just Scott Norton and Rick Steiner. So I ask again, how many roids were in this ring?
I think the only one of the four that might have been clean was Rick. But to be fair, the argument could be made that Rick was too dumb to know the difference anyway.
I honestly, considering Scott being his brother, I think Scott Norton had a better chance at being clean than Rick Steiner.
I mean,
anyway.
it's hard to argue that.
So, but the muscle mass in this match, good Lord. Oh. And Scott's not even in his final form yet. Steiner's not even in his final form yet. He's not scary Scott Steiner like he would get. Here he's just jacked up Scott Steiner.
Steiner would have turned on his brother Rick the previous month at Super Bowl, and WCW, being WCW, would not give us them in a one-on-one singles match until all the way at Halloween Havoc.
Why? Because screw you, that's why.
I was going to use that same line, except I was going to use a number on my keypad, but same difference.
The idea's still there. All right, moving on. We've given this match too much.
Well, we do need to describe the finish here. Luger by disqualification, if memory serves. Oh, no, Luger by pinfall. Rick Steiner with a roll-up, and Luger hits the bionic forearm to the back of the head and then rolls up Steiner for the 3 count. Yes, because having Scott Steiner lose his first match as Big Papa Pump makes sense. Why? Because WCW.
I don't know that he was Big Papa Pump yet. He was medium Papa Pump.
He was Papa Pump adjacent.
He was Little Petey Pump, Papa Pump right now.
Didn't think we'd work the Petey Williams reference into tonight. Well done.
Thank you. All right. So our next contest is...
Yes, please.
much better. much better. It is a triple jeopardy match, triple threat match, for the United States Championship. DDP defends against Raven and Chris Benoit.
Who? Never mind.
Don't start.
I'm not. Again, long-time listeners know, if you're not a long-time listener, if you're just now recently checking out the show, if you want myself and Patrick's opinion on the whole Benoit situation, feel free to listen to our WrestleMania 20 review. It's available in the archives over at Spreaker.com, as well as on YouTube as well.
Yes.
Search for the Wrestling to the Max channel on YouTube.
It's on my channel.
Well, I don't know what your channel was called.
Okay, never mind. Anyway,
you just have a playlist set up for them. You don't have anything actually put together on your page.
That's true. So, anyway.
All right. Triple threat.
Obviously, standard triple threat rules here. No disqualification, no countouts. In this match's case, falls count anywhere. It's a wonder why it's the longest match on the show.
Well, technically, it's contested under Raven's rules.
I don't know that it actually was.
It was. Shivani announced it pretty close to the start of the contest that it was under Raven's rules, which is to say there were no rules, no countouts, no disqualifications, falls count anywhere.
Maybe I just didn't hear the Raven rules part of the no disqualification, no count out, falls count anywhere. Anywho, I mean, the three of them pretty much go all over, including Raven and Benoit throwing DDP through the set, which I thought was actually really cool.
Yeah, it was a very impressive visual, and one that the WWE would actually mimic. Do you remember the pay-per-view?
Would that be, hang on.
Without looking it up.
I'm not. Unforgiven 03?
Unforgiven 02 for Brock and Big Show, for Brock and Taker, but not what I was referring to. I was actually referring to Cena and Edge, where the Big Show put Cena through a stage light, similar to the same kind of lighting rig that they had for the Uncensored side.
See, I was thinking more of the set piece that Taker throws Brock through.
That would be the O in Unforgiven, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe? But along the same lines. You don't want to give me the credit for being right. It was just a different answer. It was, oh God, I'm not even going to go there.
Partial credit, we're moving on.
It was an alternative fact. Moving on. But the finish to this one, though, a little wonky. Great that they were able to pull it off. I feel bad for Raven and DDP, though.
You remember I told you I had a line that I wasn't going to share with you until we did the show about that finish?
Yeah.
I didn't know WCW got their tables from Japan.
You already shared that line. You texted me that line.
I did? Oh.
Yes.
Oh, I gave away my own punchline. Oh, well. My point stands.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, DDP goes... It was Raven, right?
Yes. Cutters him off of the top rope through the table.
Yeah, he goes and hits a diamond cutter. I wouldn't say through a table, though.
Into a table would probably work better.
Yeah, because they land on it and it half breaks. And it more just falls over. DDP has to make a hell of a lunge, though. Because he essentially was attempting to clear the table. And the table was a fair ways out. So, fair play for him to at least get the distance, but ow.
This is the point in his career when Diamond Dallas Page still had some hops, apparently.
And, of course, he's working with injured ribs. That probably didn't help.
You show me a Diamond Dallas Page match where his ribs aren't injured and we'll have a conversation.
Do you really want to go to 2000 WCW?
We are next month.
Ironically, it's going to be the 2000 edition of the pay-per-view that comes after this one.
Interestingly enough, though, I do want to talk about a little bit more about this match here. You mentioned the fact that they brawled throughout the arena with this match here. But at the same time, the brawl that they had throughout the arena with this match was still a very entertaining match for the people in the audience as well, because they kept it in the ringside area where everybody could see, and they went around to the different sides of the arena where everybody got a view. Plus, it was well within the framing of the WCW camera setup as well, so you never really lost contact with any of them, unlike the brawls, like the hardcore matches we would have in the WWF, where things would go backstage and you'd lose visuals for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes and such.
Kind of like the dumpster match we'll see next week?
Similar, yes.
Okay, very good. But, yeah, I mean, it's weird, though, to see DDP I could see, Raven I could definitely see. It's weird to see somebody like Chris Benoit in a match like this that's more or less a brawl, because he didn't do too many of these kinds of matches, aside from, I'm forgetting the year, Bash at the Beach 96?
96 against Kevin Sullivan. Well, obviously you're not very familiar with the tag team matches that him and Malenko had against Raven and Saturn from 1999 in WCW, because those four men went all over the arena against each other as well.
This is true.
And I'd say this is a huge fan of their tag team title match that they had against each other at Spring Stampede in 1999, which in my opinion is one of the most underrated pay-per-views of all time.
Because I'm actually about to look at that.
You're going to watch Spring Stampede 99? Nice.
No, I'm about to look at the results of it.
Oh, main event is the four-way where Page wins his first heavyweight title.
Oh, very good. All right, thanks for spoiling it. Sure.
Well, it's also available on there's a recent DVD set that has it on, the 50 Greatest Finishers. That match is on there as well.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. So DDP does end up picking up the victory via OW.
Would you like to know where WCW goes from here with the United States title? Because I actually know the answer.
Sure.
Diamond Dallas Page would lose the title to Raven at Spring Stampede. Raven would lose it the next night on Nitro to Bill Goldberg.
During Goldberg's undefeated streak, which, by the way, to those paying attention to this show, there is no Goldberg on this show. Little bit surprised by that, but at the same time, I don't know that I should be surprised. Because Goldberg was not the phenomenon that he would become, a little bit later in the year. So I'm still kind of surprised that he's not on this show.
Well, I would make the argument too that, let's be honest, Goldberg's always been a part-time at best worker.
No. We're talking WCW 1998.
He was still a part-time. And he was still a part-time at best worker.
Your opinion.
Okay. Once we go off the air, we're going to look back through the pay-per-view results in 1998 and see how many of the actual pay-per-views Goldberg wrestled on. I guarantee you the number's less than 7. But let's go ahead and continue with the show here. We'll do that once we go off the air.
Okay. So our next contest, the Giant facing Kevin Nash in a match where the jackknife powerbomb is legal. For those What?
The jackknife powerbomb is legal per the request of the Giant.
Alrighty. Why was it banned?
It was banned because Kevin Nash dropped the Giant on his head with it back at Sold Out in January of 1998. It was basically a Ganso. It was basically a Ganso jackknife to our Japanese fans.
Yeah, that's about the best way you can put it. So of course, immediately, what do Shivani, Tanay, and Heenan automatically make the point of? The Giant's bulked up, so I don't know why he'd want the jackknife powerbomb, because Nash isn't going to be able to lift him.
Well, one of the things that they showed in the video package leading up to the show, and we didn't talk about this. We'll talk a little bit more about this later. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. The video package that led into the pay-per-view itself here actually showed the Giant powerbombing Kevin Nash on Nitro and getting arrested. because the move was banned altogether from WCW. The powerbomb was banned altogether from WCW by J.J. Dillon. On Nitro, the Giant powerbombed. Okay, can we just call him the Big Show?
No.
The Big Giant made his return from the injury at Nitro and powerbombed Kevin Nash and got arrested on Nitro. And when they tried to put the cuffs on the Giant on Nitro, he broke out of the handcuffs, and then that's what led to the there was a sign that was shown as the entrances were being made for this, and it was the Giant with a pair of broken handcuffs on his wrist.
Alrighty. Well, here's the thing. If the Giant wasn't at WCW, he, much like a lot of people at this point, probably wasn't watching. So he may not have even known that the powerbomb was banned.
I would argue that WCW was still more popular than the WWF at this point.
For about 2 more weeks.
About 2 months actually, but
no.
The last time WCW would beat the WWF in the ratings would be July 8th, 1998.
And the first time WWF would beat WCW would be Austin and McMahon, which I believe was either the night after or 2 Raws after WrestleMania 14.
It was the night after because that's where Dude Love came. That's where Dude Love made his debut.
No, it couldn't have been the night after.
Actually, I think it might have been an early episode in April of Monday Night Raw. I'll have to look up the Matt Petticord, PDRWrestling.net, has done a really good job of going back and reviewing these older shows. For if you don't have the time to sit and watch the full shows, you can read his reviews and check out what he feels might be worth your time to check out, plus to pick up all the major storylines from that time frame too. So, having read Matt's thing, I want to say it's the first one in April of 1998, where Austin and McMahon is supposed to happen, and then that's where Mick Foley returns to the WWF as Dude Love after having been fired as Cactus Jack.
But the reason that I can tell you it's not the night after is because Cactus Jack is in that steel cage match the night after.
I just remembered that the rematch for the tag titles inside of the steel cage with the formation of Degeneration X.
So ha 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 ha. Anyway, so the Giant and Kevin Nash. Can we skip this one?
I mean, there's not really a whole lot to talk about. It's 2 dudes throwing power moves. I mean,
and it's probably a drunk Kevin Nash half-assing it yet again.
I would disagree. I would say that Nash actually brought him this contest. That bump he took over the top rope on that clothesline is probably the biggest bump I've ever seen Kevin Nash take.
Even still, there's not a whole lot of good.
There's a whole lot worse on this show than these two.
Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Main event forthcoming. Dun, dun, dun.
All right, well, if you're just going to flat out answer it, then yeah, main event forthcoming. But I mean, and then, of course, what ends up happening, half of the NWO interferes. So,
and the Giant single-handedly beats up all of them. Well, I guess Brian Adams was smart enough to get the hell out of the ring. Scott Norton and I think it was Conan and Vincent who took chokeslams. Oh, speaking of which, the text message that I sent you. Now, do you know what I was talking about when I said "Holy sandbag, Batman"?
Yes.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I have never been a huge fan of Vincent Virgil Money. Call him what you want to. But dude got up for Nash's for Giant's chokeslam. I keep wanting to call him the Big Show. Dude got up for Giant's chokeslam. Conan sandbagged off out of the Giant.
Yeah, it it was just not good. So shows how trustworthy he can be.
it's another example of Conan looking out for himself. And the sad fact of the matter is he's made kind of a career out of it.
Yeah, that sounds all right.
See what happened, like we talked about earlier, see what happened in his match with freaking Juventud earlier in the show. Juventud gets almost nothing in throughout the course of the match, flukes a roll-up, and then gets his ass beat after the match.
Yeah. I know. Scary how right you actually are about this. Good Lord. So, but yeah, so the Giant ends up picking up the victory, and other than that, it's just kind of aside from him getting blasted with a baseball bat, which even that he knows sells it anyway.
Which, by the way, why didn't Bryan Adams sell that? The bat came off and hit him square in the back of the head too.
Probably because he wasn't expecting it and knew that it wasn't meant for him.
Okay, but still, with something like that, when you're going to try to sell a baseball bat here, let's be honest, it's a styrofoam bat. I mean, or at the very least, it's some kind of modified wood that's meant to break like that, so that way it's not, they're not going to snap an actual baseball bat over somebody's shoulder. That would be retarded. But if you would think that if you're going to have that happen there, that it would behoove the talent, specifically the ones that aren't meant to be superhuman, Bryan Adams, to actually sell the damn thing.
I guess.
Sorry, it bothers me. I'm good.
All right. Speaking of good, this next match, should have been good. Should have. Bret the Hitman Hart versus Kurt Hennig.
Hennig.
I know what I said.
And I want you to say it correctly. We're not from Alabama.
Bret the Hitman Hart versus Kurt Hennig.
Thank you.
I won't lie. I absolutely called it Hennig for the longest time. But I did too. I did too.
I absolutely thought it was Hennig. I was not aware that there was no N at the end of his name. Now I know better. Although, to be honest, more times than not, I just call him Mr. Perfect anymore anyway.
Yeah, I think everyone does that. I still call him Mr. Perfect.
He's perfect to us. Well, damn it. Rest in peace, Kurt.
So, this match should have been good.
This match, not so perfect.
King of the Ring 93, this wasn't.
SummerSlam 91, this wasn't either. Yeah. I can fool WWF pay-per-view references. But in all seriousness, though, let's clarify this by saying that it's actually not a bad match. But knowing what these two men are capable of, it could have been so much better. I think that the argument could be made here that Bret already did not care about WCW, and it was showing in his in-ring work. Because you bring in Bret Hart to be your showcase superstar after everything that went down in Montreal. Hart debuts at Starrcade as a referee to prevent a screw job. Nudge, nudge. And then
that doesn't happen.
And then wrestles Ric Flair in his debut at Sold Out in 98. The Flair match is pretty good. The Bret match here is okay, or the Hennig match here is okay. But it's more of a case of why bother? Why are we doing this contest at this point?
I think part of it also doesn't help. I almost feel like I could pinpoint the exact moment that Bret stopped caring. Do you want to know when it was?
I'm listening.
When they showed him his shirt for WCW.
I don't remember.
You don't know that. I don't know. You don't remember it.
I don't.
All right.
I know that he came out wearing a Calgary Hitman jersey for this show.
Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the shirt that they sold to the public.
Yeah, I don't remember it.
So, we're coming off of Montreal in Canada.
Obviously.
Bret Hart, Calgary born and raised. You know, Mr. Canada, Captain Canada, you could say.
Oh, is this the shirt with the Canadian and American flags mixed together that you're referring to?
What Canadian flag? He's standing in front of the American flag.
I seem to recall seeing it. It's the one that was shown in the crowd before the match. I seem to recall both flags being on that shirt.
No.
Look closely.
There may have been maple. There were maple leaves on there, but there was no Canadian flag, and they were barely visible. He's standing in front of an American flag. There is no Canadian flag in there.
Yeah, well, WCW wasn't exactly known for their creative sources.
So that was probably about the moment that he just looked at it and just went, well, crap. So
I almost feel like I want to do something Montreal 97 at some point.
I'd rather not.
Well, I'd be interested to get your theory as to whether or not you feel the whole thing was a work or not. But not a topic to get into right now.
No. In terms of this match, I almost think Brett wasn't meant to win by submission.
I think Rick Rude missed his cue and was supposed to break it up for a disqualification as well.
And we're talking legitimately, Rick Rude is late by half a second, maybe.
Yeah, if you're going to have that thing like this, just real quick, if you're going to have the thing where Rude breaks it up there, why have Hennig take the submission loss before he does so? Why not have Rude jump him before Hennig submits?
I mean, well, that's part of my thinking is something that I noticed. Hennig is not looking at Rude. Hennig is looking off to just a different side. So Hennig can't see Rude. So if he's going to notice that nothing's happening, it's like, well, we got to end this match eventually. So he's going to tap.
So you think that the finish was blown as well? Because it did come off kind of shaky to me, too.
Yeah, I think Rude was supposed to break it up for a disqualification, and he was just like a half a second too late.
Well, what happened a little bit later on in the year at Fall Brawl in 1998, Kurt Hennig would wrestle Dean Malenko, and Hennig would end up caught in the Texas Cloverleaf, and Rick Rude would break it up for the disqualification. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the intent, and Hennig just tapped out before Rude could make the save.
Yeah, so I think in this case it was just mistimed.
The match itself wasn't bad. It's just not what you would expect when you hear the names Bret Hart and Kurt Hennig together.
Even in 1998.
Especially in 1998. I mean, obviously they're not the workers they were back in 1993 or anything, or 1991 for that matter. Well, Hennig might have been better than he was in 91 because 91 was when he was having his back problems. But yeah. my point being is that you would expect more when you see these two names lined up against each other on a show.
Exactly. So this match, not bad, but you could have expected more.
Right.
So, our next contest, our sub-main event here, Sting puts up his WCW World Heavyweight Championship, won in the not screwjob, unscrewjob finish at Starrcade 1997. Dumbass.
Wrong. May I?
Sure.
It's history lesson time. So everything goes down at Starrcade 97 that goes down. Many feel it's the beginning of the end of WCW. Well, J.J. Dillon was pissed. Storyline-wise, of course. And stripped Sting.
Let's be honest here.
Probably legitimately pissed that Hulk Hogan paid off Nick Patrick. But anyways, allegedly. J.J. Dillon stripped Sting of the WCW Heavyweight title on January 8th of 1998. And then they end up making the rematch between Sting and Hogan for Super Brawl in the Cow Palace in February.
I forgot about that. Sorry.
And
that's Super Bowl 8.
And that's where Sting would win the title.
Can't believe I blanked on that.
Well, the more you know. Just figured I'd help.
Thank you. I still feel stupid, though, for messing that up. And he's facing not yet Scott Hall. With Dusty Rhodes in his corner.
He is not quite yet last call Scott Hall. All right, so explanation time again. Do you know why Scott Hall has this title opportunity?
Yes, I do.
All right. For our listeners at home that don't, Scott Hall won what was known as World War III back in 1997. It was the 3-ring, 60-man WCW answer to the Royal Rumble. If the Rumble itself wasn't a big enough cluster fudgesicle, WCW decided to one-up it because, well, WCW. Scott Hall wins the cluster fudge, World War III, last eliminating the giant Luger and I want to say Kevin Nash at the same time, or relative proximity to each other in order to win the match.
Yeah.
Scott Hall would not get his title opportunity at Starrcade because of the whole Sting Hogan thing. Scott Hall would not get his opportunity at Sold Out because there was no champion. Scott Hall would not get his opportunity at Super Bowl because the whole Sting Hogan thing. Therefore, some 4 months after Scott Hall won World War III, he gets his title opportunity here at Uncensored.
This is akin to somebody winning the Royal Rumble and then getting their title shot at
Payback.
I was going to go with Battleground.
Same difference. They're both in May.
Well, no, I was going to say Battleground because it's a B pay-per-view, and it's kind of in between major pay-per-views. Although, actually, in this case, we're still after a WCW major pay-per-view. We just happen to be before the next major pay-per-view.
Well, I don't know that Spring Stampede was that big of a deal. I would argue that the next big WCW pay-per-view was Slamboree in May.
And then Bash at the Beach.
Which would have been June.
That's weird. Anyway. So yeah. Sting faces Scott Hall, and it's not, I mean, it's a shorter match. It's actually among the shortest, from what I'm seeing, the third shortest match on the card.
Wasn't it only like 7 minutes or so?
I'm seeing 8.5.
Okay. It felt really short, too. But here's the thing, though. Scott, you can't argue the effort that Scott Hall puts in here. Scott Hall bumps his ass off for Sting in this match. Do you know why Scott Hall bumps his ass off? You know why Scott Hall bumps his ass off for Sting in this match? Because Hulk Hogan couldn't, and because Randy Savage,
Like I said, Hogan couldn't, and Savage won't.
There was a whole big thing about Sting's weight issues at this time, too, but we're not going to get into that conversation here. Here's my question for you. Did Scott Hall receive another WCW heavyweight title opportunity? I don't believe that he did in a singles match. I know he had a triple threat match. I know he had a triple threat match at Super Bowl in 2000, but I do believe that this might have been his only one-on-one on WCW pay-per-view heavyweight title opportunity.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think so.
At least it would stand to reason to me that this was his only one-on-one match. What did you think of the contest itself?
It kind of felt like a throwaway match a little bit. And I'm dead serious when I say this. You know what the biggest focus out of Sting versus Scott Hall was?
Dusty Rhodes?
Hulk Hogan. Seriously.
Well, I mean, does that, given who you just referred to, does that really surprise you?
Well, okay. You couldn't at least talk about, what might happen if Scott Hall wins the World Championship and leave it at that. No, it's Well, if Scott Hall wins the championship, is he just going to hand it over to Hulk Hogan? How nervous is Hulk Hogan going to be knowing that another member of the NWO has the World Heavyweight Championship? Hogan.
Brother.
Scott Hall at least some credit? I know, we're talking about 1998 WCW Hulk Hogan, but still, give Scott Hall some credit. Tony Schiavone, Bobby Heenan, and Mike Tenay are not Hulk Hogan. They are professionals. Okay, Mike Tenay and Bobby Heenan are professionals. Okay, Mike Tenay's the professional that actually gives a damn still.
No, I'm not entirely sure Tenay still gave a damn either.
Tony Schiavone gave a damn because he had no choice. Heenan didn't give a damn.
No, by this point, Bobby Heenan had checked out. I do believe his exact quote was "Bye, Felicia."
You know what the best part is? Bobby Heenan, even checked out, is still better than most.
He's certainly better than most of the commentators on Raw and SmackDown these days.
All 867 of them?
Yes.
So Sting retains, and he just stares down Dusty Rhodes, and the whole match means nothing. This was a throwaway match just to give Scott Hall his championship match, finally. It meant nothing. Scott Hall never really had a major shot at it. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Look, you know what the biggest problem I had with this match was? And it's actually, Hulk busts his ass. Like, I'm a huge fan of Scott Hall. Before Scott Hall had his demons, Scott Hall was one of the best workers WCW had. The problem is that Scott Hall had demons that clearly got the better of him in the long run.
Remember, folks, we're talking about a guy who would be openly drinking during a match in WCW.
I would point out that was Ice-T. It was a storyline, but we're going to move on.
Who cares?
Regardless. You made me lose my train of thought. Okay, yeah, back to this here. You know what Scott Hall's most effective move in this contest was?
Kick?
A bionic elbow drop by Dusty.
Yeah. What the hell does that tell you?
Congratulations, Scott. You're going to get your 2 count off of a bionic elbow drop, and you're going to get a 2 count off of Dusty throwing you an illegal object to use as well. Yeah. Bravo, Scott. I can understand why WCW drove him to drinking.
Are we really surprised?
No, not at all. I think it's time for the main event, even though we may not want to. Brother.
What's worse is that there's no winner and Hogan still wins.
Hogan wins all.
All right.
That's the thought that just popped into my head when you said that. Okay.
Our main event.
I'm going to get a drink and try to collect myself, by all means.
Our main event. A battle for supremacy in the NWO. The 2 biggest egos, the 2 leaders of the NWO battle it out in a steel cage match. Why? Because.
Reasons.
Because reasons. Hollywood Hulk Hogan faces off against the Macho Man Randy Savage. The most dangerous man in sports entertainment, according to Bobby Heenan. Quite frankly, at this point, yeah, I believe him.
I would argue that at this point that might have been Scott Steiner.
No, I don't think we're at Scott's level yet.
So
I would say give Scott about 6 more months.
So you're saying Scott was getting there, but he wasn't there yet.
Exactly.
Okay, fair enough.
So, yeah. Great, now that's my train. Okay. So, real quick. Is it bad that I originally thought this cage had 8 doors on it?
No, it's the way the paneling was. I thought it looked weird too, but then again, you get so used to seeing the blue bar WWF cage around this time frame that This is the cage that I think that similar to this design here that they use in the WWF nowadays, or in the WWE nowadays, actually.
Well, even still, that's like each side is 3 equal-sized panels.
Right. I mean, pre-assembled before the show at least, so that way we didn't have to take a crap ton of time to set up the cage, unlike they used to do with the classic bar setup in the WWF, though.
This is true. You know, at least the one thing WCW got right, surprisingly, is they started all the way back in the late 80s with having pre-made cages and you just drop them because war games.
Well, not to mention they had to give something to come down from the roof like Michael Buffer was doing his deal, too.
This is true. And that also happens here. Michael Buffer is the only one not named Dave Penzer that does intros, and the only match he does is the main event. Way to earn that $300,000, Michael.
Again, why? Because WCW.
I believe by 90, I want to say, or actually it may have already been $500,000 by this point, and I believe it would top out in 99 at $650,000 per appearance.
These part-timers taking up all the money.
And Goldberg's not even on this show.
No Goldberg, no Lesnar, no Undertaker, no Rock. What's going on with this? Never mind. Moving on. Sorry.
Oh, we get Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, and then, you know what? You're going to regret that when he shows up in 2.5 weeks in frickin' Orlando, too.
2.5? 2.
1.5?
14 days from today.
Whatever.
Today is Sunday. 2 weeks from today.
Yeah, I'm not particularly excited about Mania right now, so let's just get back and finish the show here. We're making decent time. I'd like to keep it that way.
I know. So, basically, Hogan beats the hell out of Savage, and Hogan keeps beating the hell out of Savage. Savage gets very little offense in, yet again, aside from, at one point, a double axe handle from the top of the cage. Mighty impressive. I feel bad because Savage essentially lands on his knees.
Well, let's talk about the fact that Hogan does gig as well.
This was WCW. Of course, Hogan gigged.
Not really. They had a usually very strong anti-blood policy in the company around this time frame. The Uncensored pay-per-view made sense that they would bleed, but at the same time, it wasn't something that you saw every day in WCW, which kind of makes this match stand out a little bit more than your traditional WCW match does. Actually, I thought the match was a little bit more back and forth than you did, but at the same time, I don't think at any point was it ever really interesting, though.
That's the thing. It wasn't. Second longest match on the pay-per-view, and to me, it was just, despite the fact that Savage could still move. You know, Savage was still pretty fast, but at the same time, you're severely confined to the steel cage match, which apparently, by the way, the rules for this are pinfall and submission only?
I'm guessing because they went out of the cage for a while and brawled around ringside for a bit.
Which I found mighty weird because I could have... go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm a firm belief that cage matches need to be pinfall submission anyway. I don't believe in escape the cage crap.
So basically, you believe in the Southern rules of a cage match rather than the New York rules.
Where you put two men inside of a cage, they fight to see who the better man is, and the better man is the one who scores the pinfall or the submission, not the person who runs away from the fight.
Yeah, the escape the cage is regarded as the New York rules.
By New York, they mean Vince.
Yeah, pretty much. Here's my question. Mickey Henson had a chain around the cage. How the hell did that get undone that they got outside?
Henson unlocked the cage before they came outside. You could see him unlocking it in the background as Hogan was dragging Savage over towards the door.
Oh, okay. And then some guy interferes because he still doesn't have a name yet.
Can we not give him a name?
Huh?
Can we not give him a name because that guy under general principle?
I'll call him the Disciple.
The Zodiac, the Booty Man, the Barber, the Butcher, the Man with No Name, Ed fucking Leslie.
The Butcher, the Barber, the Candlestick Marker.
Candlestick Maker. It's Butcher, Baker, Candlestick Maker, but...
I know that's what the line is, Mr. Broadhurst. I was trying to think of a way to spin that. Thank you for killing that. Anyway, Disciple interferes. They kill the referees, and then eventually we find out that this whole damn thing could have been done on Nitro because the Disciple interferes and kills the referees, like I just said, thereby putting this match into a no contest. Then Sting comes down from the rafters wearing his harness, and we think that it's going to be the Disciple and Hogan versus Sting and Savage, and lo and behold, Savage beats the hell out of Sting.
Well, they did set up their Spring Stampede main event with that. And
this could have been done on Nitro.
And technically speaking, it did set up the next title change after that, too, because it would be Hogan taking the title off of Savage in April of '98 after Savage wins it.
How soon after?
I know you know, so go ahead and say it so you can get it off your chest.
The night after. Savage wins it in a no DQ. Savage wins it in a no DQ match at Spring Stampede, and then Hogan takes it off of Savage the night after.
One of two times that Hogan would do that to Savage in WCW.
And all three times that Savage won the belt, Hogan would sandbag. Be honest. You know that it's true.
So you're saying when it came to Randy Macho Man Savage title reigns that it came crashing down and it hurt inside?
I think it hurt everybody else inside.
Oh, see, that's damn it, you Paul. I wasn't expecting a witty response to that.
Thank you.
All right.
Because, yes, Hogan sandbagged Macho Man's first title win at World War III in '95. Legitimately sandbagged it by bitching and moaning for 10 minutes after. Then Savage would win it at Spring Stampede in '98. Hogan would win it the next night. And then I believe Great American Bash '99, Savage would win it for the third time and once again lose it to Hogan the next night.
I think it was a little bit earlier than that. I want to say it was Slamboree '99 with Kevin Nash over Diamond Dallas Page. So yeah, Great American Bash.
Yeah.
Well, it was pretty much a game of hot potato with the WCW title at that point, anyway. So.
Well, yeah, but not the point. Anyway. So are we about done?
I do believe that takes us to, and I can't believe that we're using this phrase this week of all weeks, the big finish.
I was going to try everything I could to avoid saying that.
Given the events of this week, I don't think I had a choice.
No, we didn't.
To borrow a line from Keith Olbermann here, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the big show. We just call him.
It depends on who you ask.
We just call him the Giant in these parts.
Yes. Alrighty. Best and worst match of this show. This is probably going to be unanimous. What's your best match of this show?
As much as I like Jericho and Malenko, it's really good. And as entertaining as Eddie and Booker T is to open the show here, it's really hard to pick against that three-way match for the United States title there. All three of these guys involved in this feud brought it against each other, and this was just another example of it. They would have a really good match against each other at Uncensored. I want to say it was Diamond Dallas Page and Benoit for the U.S. title or at Super Bowl, And then the match the following month where Raven would beat Diamond Dallas Page for the U.S. title is really good as well. So I'm going to go with the triple threat match for the U.S. title.
And that makes it unanimous because, yeah, it was definitely for me the triple threat match. Or, wait. I'm sorry, we have to say it right. The triple Jeopardy match. Anyway, triple threat match. Yeah, it was the most entertaining. For me, it was the most engaging. And like you said, it stayed visible for the crowd for the most part because they stayed largely in the ringside area. And the furthest I think they really would go was the small crowd area off to the side. But other than that, they kept to the stage area and the ringside area. So that part, I really liked. How can you really turn down a match involving DDP at this point, or Chris Benoit at this point, or Raven at this point? Because this was before Raven stopped caring. So, yeah, without a doubt for me, it's the triple threat match for the U.S. title. It's definitely the best match.
And let's be honest here. When Raven stopped caring, Raven stopped caring.
Raven's shirts became white and clean. Anyway. All right, worst match on this show.
That depends. Does Luger Steiner count as a match?
I was wondering, I actually had a hunch that you were going to ask that too.
I mean, it's a pay-per-view, but they only
go results, so yes.
I mean, it's a pay-per-view, but they only go 4 minutes, and let's be honest, it's two roided-up dudes trading hold back and forth for 4 minutes. It's not like either of them do anything particularly impressive in that 4 minutes. I'm going to give Savage and Hogan a pass here because I actually thought that this was one of the better efforts they had against each other in WCW, so I'm going to go ahead and say that Luger and Steiner is my worst match for the evening.
Main event was the biggest piece of crap I've ever seen. All right, no. Struggling between two of them. One of them was the match that you just mentioned. And, no, you know what? Yeah, I have to. Originally, I was considering going with Nash and Giant just because, But, yes, we harped on it enough, but yeah, you're talking about two roid monkeys just beating the hell out of each other for only 4 minutes. It's the shortest match on this card, with good reason. And like I said, this isn't even Steiner's final form. Hell, it's not even really Luger's final form either, because I think he would actually get bigger in 2000.
Oh, no, Luger would definitely roid up even further in late 99, early 2000. And I don't think you're giving Kevin Nash enough credit for that match against the Giant, because I actually thought Nash bumped his ass off for the Giant in that match.
He was probably drunk and didn't realize who he was.
Maybe he was. So you're saying he was bumping like a cruiserweight because he thought he was a cruiserweight?
Maybe. This is Kevin Nash we're talking about. This is Luger Nash we're talking about.
If either of them were drunk, it was Scott Hall, not Kevin Nash.
No, it would be Nash too.
All right. Anyway. Next.
Alrighty. What is your trash for this?
I'm going to go with the finishes. And specifically, I'm going to go with the way everything turned out in Juventud Conan, the disqualification finish to the Giant and Kevin Nash, and then the no contest finish to the main event. If you're going to put these matches on pay-per-view, you need to give your pay-per-view audience their money's worth. And specifically doing a no contest in the pay-per-view main event, that's just bad business. Making Juventud look like a joke after picking up a victory, that's bad business for somebody you allegedly want to push. The Giant Kevin Nash thing, I mean, I can kind of understand it. Kevin Nash was the booker at this time. Kevin Nash could get away with pretty much whatever Kevin Nash wanted to get away with and decided to get away with. But at least I thought the Nash and Giant match was entertaining until we got to the screwy finish. So I'm going to give them a little bit more of a pass on that one than I am the other two. So I'm going to go with the booking committee and the finishes that they came up with for this particular show.
I'm just looking at it.
Honorable mention to our special ed sign holders in Mobile, Alabama, as well.
Oh no, I won't even. It turns out both of the signs that they showed before the Bret Hart and Kurt Hennig match were spelled wrong. Aside from the one that I mentioned earlier, where it was Kurt Hennig will lose his heart to the Hitman. Yes, with an M, not an N. The sign they showed before that was Bret Hart is the excellent of execution. They spelled execution right. They forgot the last C in excellence. Is Kurt Hennig in the NWO at this point? Yes, right?
Yes.
All right.
Hennig would have joined the NWO in September of '97.
Yeah, at War Games.
Mm-hmm.
Do you realize, aside from one, every NWO match had a goofy finish?
Well, that was kind of the modus operandi for the NWO at this point, Patrick.
I know. Movie gets made to look like an idiot after beating Conan. Actually, out of the 9 matches, 7 featured the NWO. The only ones that didn't were the opener, Booker and Eddie, and Jericho and Malenko. Luger and Steiner, interference. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 3 matches. DDP, Raven, and Benoit.
You'll notice that the 3 matches that don't have interference are the 3 best matches on the card. Shocker.
Yeah, imagine that. Luger and Steiner, interference. Nash and Giant, interference. Hennig and Brett, interference. Hall and Sting. You could regard as the only one that was actually clean that involved the NWO.
Dusty interfered like 6 times. What are you talking about?
Clean finish.
Well, yeah, the Scorpion Death Drop. Well, I mean, technically...
Yeah, I meant finish.
Technically, he did grab Scott Hall by the hair.
Shut up. And then Hogan and Savage with that whole thing. You realize we're almost 2 years into the NWO, right? This is insane. The fact that this is still happening. This should have ended 4 months prior. The NWO should have at least started to die 4 months prior. And it didn't. And it would not start to die until it split a few months from now. This is stupid. The NWO is past their prime, to say the least.
To be fair, the NWO was past its prime by the time it debuted in WCW, but that's neither here nor there.
No. Those wrestlers were past their prime. The NWO idea was cool. The wrestlers were past their prime.
All right, that's fair, I suppose.
So, so my trash for this is the severe 2/3 of this card severe overbooking of the NWO. At this point, almost 2 years later, this is borderline pathetic. It should have died by now. Like I said, if it didn't die starting at Starrcade 97, when Sting beat Hogan, instead, no, they have to do that whole goofy thing with Hogan paying off Nick Patrick, allegedly, although it's pretty obvious that he did because Hogan didn't want to lose, and this is the one time that Bischoff overruled him somehow. It should have been dead by now. Instead, they're being severely overbooked 2/3 of this card. Yes? Oh, I thought you were saying something and I interrupted you.
Nope. I was letting you finish your rant.
Okay. What's your cash?
I'm actually going to go with the opening video package. I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, it's very low budget, but it's still pretty cool. The whole uncensored
low budget for $1 billion company. Sorry.
Okay. At the same time, though, let's be honest. More times than not, WCW video packages were crap. But I thought this one right here really set the tone for the major matches on the evening, and I think it's one of those ones that when I went back and rewatched it, I actually found myself really entertained by. So I'm going to go with the opening video package for this show. How about you, Patrick? What's your cast for this show?
The titles not being in the NWO. Well, okay, kind of. While the NWO was, like I said, involved in 2/3 of this show, none of them went in as defending champions, so I'm glad at this point, at least, I'm trying to think of how to word this. I'm basically trying to think of how to word this without it sounding like I'm just bashing the NWO even more. If you look at the champions, Sting, DDP, Jericho, Booker T, all of them, homegrown talents, essentially. And actually, you could almost argue all of them were homegrown talents, the only exception being Jericho. It was nice to see that homegrown talent was still getting credit, even if it was, at certain things happening. But, Booker T having the television championship, Jericho having the cruiserweight championship, DDP having the U.S. championship, and Sting being the world heavyweight champion, it was good to see that while, yes, the hot thing going, the NWO was still being booked very heavily. Like I said, 2/3 of this show, 6 out of the 9 matches. But it was nice that there were still aspects where they weren't forgetting their guys, their homegrown talent, the guys who had been there, for the longest time. They weren't forgetting them. So I did appreciate that all 4 of the titles that were on this show, none of them belonged to the NWO. And for the life of me, where are the tag belts? Because there's no tag title match.
Tag team champions at this point would have been the Outsiders, if I'm not mistaken. Because they would have beaten Rick and Scott Steiner at Super Brawl when Scott turned on Rick. So unless somebody beat for the belts between then and here, Rick and Scott were still the champs. Hold on, I can look it up right now. Go ahead and continue your thought process, and I'll look it up for you right now.
Well, I'm done.
Oh, well, then I'll talk about this while I look it up here. Yeah, all in all, not an awful show. I guess we're going to go right into our final rating here, right?
Pretty much.
All right, all in all, not actually an awful show. Not a great show either, but in fairness, I kind of hold WCW to a lower standard than I hold most other companies here. And I know that that's not fair in a sense to the other companies that we review, but at the same time, when it comes to a WCW pay-per-view, you kind of expect a modicum of crap because WCW. I honestly thought that they kept the BS to a relative minimum here with the exception of 1 or 2 matches. And those specific 2 matches were the main event as well as the whole schmoz ending to the Giant Kevin Nash match. The Conan Juventud thing was Conan protecting himself because of course he did. Conan's kind of a D-bag, but whatever. But all in all, though, I was actually fairly entertained by this show. I would argue that I was more entertained by this show than I was by Living Dangerously. I'm going to go ahead and give Uncensored here a 6.
Real quick, it was the Outsiders. They would hold on to them until Slamboree when they lost to Sting and the Giant.
And that's the night that Scott Hall turned on Kevin Nash, actually. Yep. And Scott Hall would join the NWO Black and White.
Real quick, Hall and Nash didn't come out with their belts.
They did not. Current champions, Sting 222, Diamond Dallas Page 1228.97, Outsiders 222, Booker T 222, Jericho 124.98.
Okay.
I have real quick. Once again, give a shout out here. Matt Petticourt's website, pdrwrestling.net. all kinds of classic WCW and WWF reviews on there. I highly recommend that people check it out. The dude's really good and very entertaining.
Okay. So, you said a 6?
Yes, 6.
You know, I feel like I'm going to be stuck giving the exact same score because I can't go as high as a 7, but I don't want to go low because while yes, the NWO overbooking and the Nitro-esque finish to the entire pay-per-view, left a bad taste in my mouth, as we've talked about, there was a good amount of good. The triple threat match was very good. Best match on the show. Jericho and Malenko, those two I don't think are capable of having a bad match. Booker and Eddie had a very good match to open the show. And Hall gave Sting at least a decent match, although, I'm not huge on that one. But it wasn't terrible. It's not like we had Scott Hall 2 years from now in the ring yet. So, thank God for that. But I can't go too high. Like we said, Hoovy, looking like an idiot. You had Luger and Steiner doing Giant and Nash being all that goofiness. The main event finish. Hart and Hennig not being as good as it should have been, plus Rude possibly being late. So, yeah, I don't want to have to do this, but yeah, I'm going to have to give the exact same score of a 6. The good outweighs the bad, luckily. But it's not, for me, 7 is kind of a different kind of plateau. That's where you start to get into the very good, great shows. This was not a very good show. This was a not bad show. So I'm going to stick with the 6.
I think that there are enough good matches on this show to justify a watch at least once by a wrestling fan. I think that the opener between Eddie Guerrero and Booker T is very entertaining, if not necessarily a great match. I think the Jericho-Malenko match is must-see, especially if you were a fan of that cruiserweight style of wrestling. The Jericho-Malenko match is must-see because there's a tacit amount of high-flying in there, given the two men involved, but there's also a lot of really good groundwork. The triple threat match for the U.S. title is must-see, in my opinion. It is one of the best matches in WCW U.S. title history. So those 3 matches alone are enough for me to justify it with a score over the traditional 5 plateau that we have as being break-even.
Yeah. So that about wraps up WCW Uncensored 1998. Sorry, I'm trying to do something while we're doing this. So yeah, that wraps up WCW Uncensored 1998 from the Mobile Civic Center in Mobile, Alabama. So that leaves us with one more show from March 1998. And I don't know if Harry would agree with me, but I would probably say it's the show that Vince McMahon has the most he's ever put into, aside from WrestleMania 1. Where if it fails, he's screwed. If it succeeds, we get where we are now. Would you agree?
I would say WrestleMania 3 with the ambitious attempt to run the Silverdome, but certainly up there in that echelon.
But it's definitely a very high-stakes one.
Absolutely.
Of course, we're talking about, the very high-stakes WrestleMania 14. Like we said, we go from a pay-per-view with a porn star to an uncensored pay-per-view to a DX-rated pay-per-view. It is the Austin era beginning. It is Tyson, Michaels, and Austin from the Fleet Center in Boston, Massachusetts. That will be next Sunday night when we cover WrestleMania 14. And let's be honest, we're going to give a little bit of a preview to the WrestleMania that will occur the week after that, WrestleMania 33 from Camping World Stadium in Orlando, Florida.
We may also throw out some predictions for NXT as well, because why not?
Yeah, sure, why not? Now, I kind of didn't talk to Harry about this, but I feel like we're going to need, I feel like this would be a good time to mention it, like, right now. And that is what we're going to be doing next month. So as not to essentially kind of throw it by the wayside with all of the WrestleMania talk next week, but it's still close enough. And that is, Harry and I question, how much do we hate ourselves? Because there's going to be 3 open Sundays next month. So Harry and I have decided to pick the worst 3 shows that we can think of in terms of somewhat major shows.
We talked about this. You're on your own for one of those shows, if you recall. I told you that the weekend of the 16th I am going to be out of the state.
So we'll pick 2 of them, or we'll push one into May.
Yes.
So the idea right now, it's going to change, we know, was to cover WWF, one of the worst WrestleManias. I think we kind of started to change our mind as to which one, though.
You're trying to get me to think it's the WrestleMania 11. Originally, we said 9.
Yeah, and then the more that I watched WrestleMania 11, because I'm going back and watching all of them, I'm up to 17, the more I realized I hate myself watching WrestleMania 11 more than 9. We'll see. It's going to be one of those 2.
9 is an interesting concept, at least with the whole world's largest outdoor toga party and stuff.
Yeah, but 11, ugh. Then the other idea was to watch the absolute clusterfudge that is the 14-match, 3-hour WCW Spring Stampede 2000.
Oh, we really need to explain the setting behind this one, though, because I think our fans are going to enjoy this. We are going to be operating that show under WCW rules. I will have a stopwatch beside my phone, and we will only talk about the match for the duration that it ran during the pay-per-view.
Why? Because there's 14 matches.
And a couple of them don't get above 3 minutes. Did I just say 3 minutes?
I made that joke earlier.
I know. I'm following up on it.
I know. And then we'll finish it off, possibly, with what is almost regarded.
I will be nice. I will grant you this one. Since we already have something set up for the beginning of May, the first open week we have in May, we can do LOW or HOW or whatever the frick it was called.
Yeah, I think this is the one that's going to be delayed a little bit as we uncover what is almost universally regarded as one of, if not the worst pay-per-view ever, and features one of my favorite wrestlers who I was able to watch his Hall of Fame speech at his almost lowest point, so it's going to make it awkward as hell for me, as we will be talking about Heroes of Wrestling. Help me.
Basically, the conversation came up that Patrick and I were wondering how much we hate ourselves, and we decided that we were going to April Fool ourselves.
So, yeah, long story short, that's what we have planned for next month. But before we get to next month, we have one more March 1998 pay-per-view to get to, so be sure to join us. Any final thoughts?
Yes. Tonight's episode of Wrestling Unwrapped is brought to you by the Madhouse Toy Chest. Stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest for all of your wrestling needs. DVDs, action figures, VHS tapes, magazines, posters, pretty much anything you can think of wrestling related, you can find it inside of the Madhouse Toy Chest. I mentioned earlier, I stand by it. He just got in a couple of those really cool Hot Wheels styles WCW cars. Those things are collector's items. They will sell if you're interested. You can find them in the toy chest. Mention that you heard this advertisement here on the show, and Jason will include a free gift with your purchase. That is stores.ebay.com/Madhouse Toy Chest. We are a presentation of the W2M Network. You can find us online at www.w2mnet.com. The newest review for Patrick and myself in the Wrestling Unwrapped written edition is up. It is Shine Volume 1. At some point, maybe this week, Patrick and I will get together and work on our Survivor Series 2016 type review. We'll let you know how that works out. You can also find more from all of your other favorites, such as Sean, Paul, Gary, Angel. Rick Balin has a new article about Shane McMahon on there as well. That's well worth checking out. That is www.w2mnet.com. That'll do it for me, Patrick. Send us home.
Alrighty. So be sure to join us next week for the 14th annual WrestleMania from March 29th, 1998, our final March 1998 pay-per-view. Until then, for Harry Broadhurst, for Sean Garmer, I'm Patrick Hetza. We'll talk to you guys next week. You have been listening to Wrestling Unwrapped as we review WCW Uncensored 1998 here on the W2M Network. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.